we should have a national
We are
holiday.
back on Morning Line. We're having an interesting conversation. Professor Mark Schwartz with us from Lipscomb University, and good to have him on talking politics. We've got some phone numbers there. Now, I want to hear what your take is on this. I was telling him that I did get out an early vote this past week, and I was saying, well, it's nice because, you know, there wasn't a huge line. I got through, and now I've got it done. Sometimes, especially in the news business, you never know on election day.
Sure.
I can get caught up in something. There have been times where I was very upset about it. I didn't get the chance to vote, and I always want to vote. So what is it that, and I've heard other people voice this, that they don't like about early voting?
Well, in a way, it kind of diminishes the day itself, and it becomes something that I think is it enhances the votes of certain groups, okay, which is fine in terms of what you're doing, but it diminishes those who actually take the trouble of that day to go.
Okay, and also, I guess I thought maybe you also would mention, I'm just wondering, you know, I have my idea of who I'm going to vote for here or there, but between now and Election Day, I've already voted.
Right.
What if something outrageous comes out about the candidate I voted for, more outrageous than what we've heard about either of the candidates to this point, that is enough to make me think, you know what, I wish I hadn't.
Yeah, I mean, there's
something to be said for that.
You don't have quite the facts in place.
I'm just thinking, what is there we can't know? Now, who knows? Maybe something more comes from WikiLeaks, or maybe something else spills out from some leaked video.
Sure.
But I figure at this point, I know pretty much everything, right?
Yeah.
But
I mean, as a political scientist, what I would prefer is more of an approach of we get a national holiday. I mean, we make it as inconvenient as possible. It's on a Tuesday. I mean, why don't we just have it on a day, make it a national holiday, and you can have all sorts of encouragement from, you know, public organizations, from corporations, from the parties, from everybody.
Sure. Or could you do it on a weekend? Is there a reason not to do it on a weekend?
No, there's not. No, there's not.
I
mean,
hear you
it's not like we're using public buildings. We're using volunteers or paid volunteers to run the polls themselves. These are not people who are being taken away from work. It's all inconvenient for the voter. For the actual running of the elections, we have a very usable system for a weekend, or again, for a national holiday. Seems like every 4 years we could afford to take a day off as a country, considering what we do get days off for as it is.
I totally agree. All right, let's take a couple phone calls. Lots to talk about. We'll start off with Joe. Joe, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Nick.
Hi, Joe.
Just a few comments here real quick. This is the worst selection for president candidates that I can ever remember in my lifetime, and not really happy with either one of them, but Donald Trump scares me to death. But I think you could very well see maybe a third party, maybe a split in Republican Party for sure, come out of this, and this, you know, because I think the Democrats are not real happy with the candidate, and I think Republicans are not. They're really in disarray with their candidate, so I think you can see a third party come out of this for the next election, and it's probably going. Anybody that's a social media maniac, after all this WikiLeaks stuff, they ought to learn something about putting stuff in emails and out on social media. So maybe they'll learn something about this. Don't ever put nothing in an email out on your Facebook and all that stuff if you don't want other people to be seeing. So that's the bottom line of the WikiLeaks guy. I don't particularly care for the guy because I don't think he's the best of the United States, but I think he's working for somebody else. But we'll see.
Joe, thank you. What do you think, Professor, about if Donald Trump loses, if he loses, or frankly, if he wins, what do you think the future of the Republican Party is as it stands now? I mean, is this going to be just a footnote, or is this going to cause some sea change within maybe the traditional Republicans and maybe create a new party?
Well, I don't think you can have really creating a new party at this point. The official party apparatus with the chair and all that is still helping him. Okay, so the party is behind him in an official way. What you have is quite a few prominent Republicans, both who are donors, both who are elected officials, who are saying, I don't want to be associated with him. I don't want to be tarred by his reputation, by what's come out about this. And the thing is, I don't think it has as much of an impact on the voting results. And therefore, I mean, that's why public officials get involved with this in the first place, is they want to be reelected. The thing is, the states, the congressional districts, the Senate are so gerrymandered in such a way that there are so many safe seats. I doubt many people are actually impacted that much, either by a Trump loss or by a Clinton loss, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I think they are their own separate races that are going on. And so what they're doing is they're saying, well, you know what, I'm going to protect my flank. I'm not going to let my opponent smear me with this. So if it is a close race, and there are several out there in the Senate, in the House, in the governor's races, that essentially what they can do is they can come back in later. Now listen, if Trump won, he would get his pound of flesh from those who stabbed him in the back by withdrawing endorsements and things like that. But he would do it in such a way that he would be able to satisfy his own sense of, I don't want to make sure that this is done the right way, but he's also a bottom line person. He's not going to sacrifice the bottom line. In business, that's profits. In politics, that means having enough power, which means having enough people who he's allied with in order to make things happen. He needs the Republican Senate. He needs a Republican House. He's making that point through this swing that he's making this week, right? He's saying, vote for me, vote for Senate, vote for Republican.
Down the line.
Yeah. So he's being very rational that way and being very level-headed about it. But to think that it's all going to be hunky-dory if he actually won, then I think you're certainly being naive if you were that way. Now, if he loses, what's going to happen in the Republican Party? They're going to have to go through some measure of, okay, we know there's a lot of dissatisfaction with us out there. So how can we, now that we've sort of gotten rid of him as a threat, how can we hold on and then grow from this? So I think a couple of things you're going to see is you're not going to have as many candidates in 2020 as you had in 2016. There's going to be some sort of discipline imposed on the party so that says, okay, we're going to raise the threshold for you to be able to actually say you're running for president. So we don't have 17 people who then are taking advantage, a weak pool, taken advantage of by this outsider. Okay, you're also going to have probably some changes to the ideological breakdown of the party itself. Some people aren't going to leave the party. They're going to say, you know what, I'm more comfortable in the Democratic Party as it's constructed right now, because I don't want to be a part of a party that's going to promote, a Donald Trump and all that kind of thing. Chair Reince Priebus, he'd probably be gone. Then you're going to have somebody take over from that. They're going to try to rebuild the party, articulate a vision without leaving behind those people who are potentially good for them. So do they become more of a populist party as opposed to a conservative party? Okay, so populism is known for certain things. They are tend to be more nationalistic, tend to be a little bit more protect our industries. Probably a little bit more tariffs, not as much free trade. Not as involved in foreign adventures. So Syria going on right now, hey, that's their problem. That kind of thing. Do things more of a national interest kind of approach. So hey, we can work with Russia on something, or we can accommodate the Taliban when it comes to whatever happens in Afghanistan. Let's just either cut our losses or see what we can salvage from these kind of things, as opposed to let's impose democracy, let's make sure people have freedom, let's make sure people have equal rights and things like that.
All right, I'm going to talk more about that. We got some people that were waiting through the break. Let's go to Brian. Brian, good morning.
Hey, three things real quick. First thing, I think everybody should watch the movie Primary Colors before they vote. And then I'll go on to my second thing real quick. Joe,
I read the book.
Will be a split in one of the parties, but it won't be the Republican Party. It's going to be the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party is so powerful nationally, there's no way the Republican Party can compete against it ever again by itself due to demographic changes. Now, what's going to happen is the Democratic Party is going to split. There's going to be one that's going to be really far left, the Socialist Party, and then there'll be the centrist Democratic Party, which with Hillary is going to be quite the hawk. And your gentleman earlier said that the millennials are concerned about, getting out of Iraq. Well, let me tell you something. Donald Trump will tell you this. Hillary is much more likely to get you in Iraq than Donald Trump would. That's just a fact. My third and final thing I would like to say is that I already voted, and I was really freaked out about voting, but a lot of people, if you're a Republican, recommend voting all down-ticket Republicans and not Trump at the top. Well, I think I did the opposite. I voted Trump at the top, and then down, there weren't that many candidates to vote for, really, because we didn't have any senators or governors running. But I voted for this lady McCall, and I believe she's a Democrat. So, because where I'm at, there was some controversy with one of the other people, so I voted for her, and then the rest of them, I don't think are really affiliated. So, all the different local areas, there'll still be real strong concentrations of Republicans, mostly in the suburbs of the Midwest, in the South, and some parts of the West. But, other than that, I think it's going to be, taken over by the Democrats.
All right, what do you think?
Well, I think he does hit on something. The Democratic Party does seem to be advantaged by changes in demographics. As we become a much more multi-ethnic, multicultural society. But at the same time, I think they're reflecting, and the Republican Party is also reflecting, we're in a time of transition. It seems like we're not really so much going along a realignment or a de-alignment of different things. We just really have a situation where a lot of things that have been bubbling beneath the surface for several years, they've been papered over with, government spending and things like that to try to say, okay, we can accommodate this, we can accommodate that, and things like that. Well, now we're in a position where we can't do that anymore. So we're having to make some hard choices, and therefore we're having to make hard choices as voters. So if the country has to make hard choices, we have to make hard choices too. And, his attitude about, who am I going to vote for and all this kind of thing, I think a lot of people are also going through that. Now, even as much as they agonize over it, people are still going to pull the lever for whoever they were probably most likely to vote for, even if it wasn't Clinton or Trump, Democrat, Republican. Okay, there's a lot of independents out there, but they lean one way or the other as well. So really what you have here is, instead of it splitting into three parties, I think the Republicans do survive. I think the Democrats do survive. We're not a country we're not a system that can really help three parties, okay? We're not a multi-party system. Even if there was a split, I think within 2 elections, that party would merge with one of the other ones, okay? So it would be a temporary situation. And when we've had a third party become successful and replace one of those parties, it's when that party that is disintegrating is so associated with something that they cannot recover from. And that was the Whig Party and the deals made over slavery. Okay, that's 175 years ago. So is this the same kind of situation today? I don't think so. I think what you've got a thing where party apparatus survives, but they change their character quite considerably. So the Republican Party of the future still comes out of the South, still comes out of rural areas. And a big part of what we have here is not North versus South or anything like that. It's urban versus rural, or urban versus suburban. And the suburban areas are where you're finding a lot more contention.
Gotcha. No, you're right. That's interesting. Let's go to Cindy. Cindy, good morning.
Good morning, Nick.
Hi, Cindy.
How you doing, buddy? Anyway, I got one thing to say. I voted for Donald Trump.
Okay, so you early voted, all right.
And also, I wanted to ask him a question.
Sure.
How come President Obama, Vice President Joe Biden are spending so much time every single day in different states campaigning for Hillary Clinton?
Oh, yeah, and it's true. You got the president out there. I think there's a very easy answer to that, but go ahead.
Well, the president and the vice president are part of the political process, and this is part of the political process, and Hillary Clinton is the one to carry forward the legacy of President Obama's administration. And that's pretty much what it is. If President Obama wants to protect his legacy, which he does, he is going to make sure that she gets elected as best he can. And from what I understand, he wants to remain in D.C., and so does Biden. So any sort of future that he has is enhanced by access to a Democratic administration.
It's interesting, too. I was just thinking that that doesn't always happen, though. It didn't seem like Romney wanted George Bush too much out on the campaign trail for him.
Well, that's because Bush had high negatives at that point, and the election was about the financial crisis that was going on, as well as the we still need to get out of Iraq and Afghanistan.
No, I'm sure
so
there were reasons, but it just doesn't always necessarily mean the incumbent is going to support the Republican or Democrat.
I think Bush would have, but he stayed out of the way. But the same thing happened with Clinton and Gore. Gore didn't want Clinton coming out there either.
That's right, exactly. So the point is, it doesn't always happen that way. But right now, Obama's, I think, recognized by Hillary as an asset, right? Clearly an asset on this.
She's not running against his administration.
Right. Right. All right, listen, let's take a break on that note, and when we come back, if you want to join in the conversation, some good comments already as we continue to kind of look at where we stand right now, 2 weeks or so away from the election day. We're going to have a new president here before too long. The number, 737-7587 on the screen. We'll be back with more right after this.